Ever pause to wonder what unfolds when you quietly vanish from someone's life? This isn't about creating distance or giving subtle hints. It's about complete detachment. No warnings, no explanations, no texts, no calls, just silence. In an era where genuine connection is often overshadowed by convenience, people grow complacent. They assume you'll always be there, waiting in the background, offering comfort whenever needed. What happens when you stop being the constant presence they take for granted? When you walk away without looking back, their world is forced to confront a stark and unsettling truth. They never truly valued what they had until it was gone. This isn't mere emotional retaliation. Disappearing is an act of reclaiming your power, of stepping back to prioritize your own peace. It's about understanding your worth and breaking free from the unspoken chains of being someone's safety net. When you vanish, it triggers a chain reaction of emotions in those left behind. Shock, confusion, regret, even fear. And yet, while they wrestle with those feelings, you begin to taste a different kind of freedom, the kind that comes from no longer needing external validation. Today, we explore this potent act of disappearing through the lens of Stoic philosophy. In a world obsessed with being seen and heard, the Stoics remind us that true strength often lies in restraint, in walking away when necessary, and in embracing the silence that follows. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why sometimes the most transformative thing you can do isn't to argue, explain, or even retaliate. It's to simply leave, without a word, and find clarity in your absence. If you're ready to shift the balance, rediscover your self-worth, and master the art of detachment, stay with us. This isn't just about making them feel your absence. It's about you reclaiming your inner strength. Because once you learn to disappear with purpose, you'll never be anyone's second option again. 1. The sting of rejection. It starts subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a quiet discomfort they can't quite place. At first, they might brush it off, telling themselves that your absence doesn't matter, that they're better off without the complications you brought into their life. But then, like a sharp gust of cold wind cutting through an unprepared traveler, the sting of rejection begins to set in, leaving them unsettled and confused. They had grown so used to you being there, offering warmth, consistency, and care, that they never imagined a day when you would walk away for good. In their mind, you were always supposed to stay, always willing to forgive, to be the one who tried a little harder. Now, without warning, you've disappeared, and they're left grappling with an unfamiliar emptiness. This sting is deeper than a mere bruise to their ego. It's the unsettling realization that they miscalculated your value. People often take for granted what they believe they have control over, assuming that as long as they offer crumbs of attention, the other person will remain loyal. Your departure dismantles this illusion, striking at the core of their unspoken sense of superiority. They never thought you would leave because, in their mind, they held the upper hand. But now, with your absence, they realize that what they mistook for control was nothing more than a fragile illusion built on your willingness to stay. From a Stoic perspective, this moment reveals a universal truth. Attachment breeds complacency, and complacency blinds us to value. By removing yourself without warning, you create a space where they are forced to confront their assumptions. Suddenly, they are no longer in control. They are vulnerable, exposed to emotions they didn't expect to feel. The sting of rejection, then, isn't just about losing you. It's about losing the comfort of certainty, the belief that they could always count on you to be there. Now, they're left questioning their actions, wondering if they were too indifferent, too dismissive, too careless with something they never truly appreciated. The irony is undeniable. They thought they could offer you less and keep you in their orbit. Now, in your absence, they're forced to confront the bitter truth. They were not giving you as much as they believed. The sting intensifies as they begin to understand that you were not the dependent one. they were. And while they feel the sharp pang of rejection, you, on the other hand, gain clarity. You realize that your worth was never tied to their recognition, that walking away was an act of strength, not weakness. Let them feel the sting. It's a necessary consequence of undervaluing someone they assumed would always stay. 2. The void of missing you. Once the initial sting of rejection settles, they find themselves entering a more haunting phase, an emotional void they didn't anticipate. At first, they may have convinced themselves that your absence wouldn't matter. "I'll move on," they thought. "Life will go on as it always has." But as the days stretch into weeks, something begins to gnaw at them, a quiet, pervasive emptiness that they can't seem to shake. It's not just your physical absence they feel. It's the absence of the energy, warmth, and stability you once brought into their life. They realize that what they once dismissed as ordinary was, in fact, an irreplaceable source of meaning. This void isn't simply about missing a person. It's about the realization of what they've lost. People often underestimate the significance of the small, everyday moments, those quiet conversations, the reassuring presence, the subtle acts of care. They believed these moments were trivial, easy to replace. But now, without you, those moments have vanished, leaving behind a hollow space that no quick distraction or superficial connection can fill. They may try, surrounding themselves with friends, indulging in fleeting pleasures, or immersing themselves in work, but nothing seems to bring the same sense of comfort or fulfillment. From a Stoic perspective, this void represents a profound opportunity for reflection, not just for them, but for you. By stepping away, you've created the space necessary for both parties to see the truth with greater clarity. For them, it's the realization that they took something invaluable for granted. For you, it's the recognition that your value was never tied to their acknowledgement. The void they feel is a reflection of the unique energy you carried, a reminder that what you offered cannot be easily replaced. Over time, this emptiness only grows. They begin to miss the things they never thought would matter. The sound of your voice, the way you made them feel understood, the simple comfort of knowing you were there. Each day without you reinforces a harsh truth. What they lost wasn't just a relationship. It was a connection to something genuine and grounding. And the more they try to fill that void with shallow replacements, the more they feel its weight pressing down on them. Let them sit with that emptiness. Don't give them an easy way back. As the Stoics teach, discomfort is often the catalyst for personal growth. By allowing them to experience the void fully, you're giving them a chance to reflect on their actions and, perhaps, grow from it. More importantly, you're reaffirming to yourself that your value doesn't diminish just because someone else failed to see it. They will miss you, not because you disappeared, but because you brought something into their life that they will never find elsewhere. And in that void, they will finally understand what they've lost. 3. Overwhelming curiosity. After the emptiness takes root, something inevitable follows: curiosity. It begins as a faint whisper in their mind, a nagging question. Where did they go? At first, they try to ignore it, telling themselves that they don't care. But as time passes and the silence persists, this quiet wonder transforms into something much more intense, an overwhelming need to know. Curiosity consumes them because, for the first time, they're no longer in control of the narrative. You've vanished completely, leaving nothing behind. Not a single clue or trace for them to grasp onto. Human nature abhors the unknown. When someone who was once so integral to their daily life disappears without explanation, the mind races to fill the void with answers. In a world where everything is constantly on display through social media, not being able to see or hear from you becomes unbearable. They'll check every platform, scroll through old messages, and even ask mutual friends for updates, all in the hope of uncovering what you're doing, who you're with, and most importantly, whether you've moved on. But here's where it gets interesting. You've left no breadcrumbs to follow. No status updates, no cryptic posts, no casual stories. Just silence. This is where their mind begins to spiral. Without tangible answers, they're left with nothing but their own imagination, and that imagination inevitably paints scenarios they dread. They picture you thriving without them, smiling with new people, living a life that no longer includes them. Each unanswered question fuels their anxiety. Have you found someone else? Are you happier now without them? Did they ever truly matter to you at all? The very lack of information drives them to obsession. In a world that craves instant gratification and constant connection, your silence becomes a deafening, unbearable force. The Stoics teach that control over external events is impossible. We can only control our own perceptions and responses. By disappearing, you strip them of any influence they thought they had over you. Their attempts to regain that control through curiosity and investigation become futile because they're chasing something they can no longer access. This, in turn, magnifies their frustration as they realize that no amount of searching will bring them closer to understanding your absence. Let them wonder. Let them stew in their curiosity. Every unanswered question deepens their longing, and every moment they spend obsessing over your whereabouts reinforces the lesson you've unknowingly taught them. They had something valuable, and now it's gone. The less they know, the more they crave to know. And in that craving lies their ultimate torment. Don't give them any answers. The mystery is your greatest power. And in this world of endless noise and distraction, your silence becomes something rare, something powerful, something they can't stop thinking about. 4. Deep self-reflection. Eventually, after the endless cycle of missing you and the torment of unanswered questions, something deeper begins to unfold: self-reflection. At first, they try to resist it. Blaming external factors or convincing themselves that you were at fault feels easier than confronting their own flaws. But as the silence continues and the void remains unfilled, they are left with no choice but to turn inward. This is the moment when they begin to see themselves clearly, perhaps for the first time in a long while. Every moment they ignored your efforts, every time they dismissed your feelings, every careless word spoken, all of it comes flooding back. And this time, there's no one to deflect the blame onto. The weight of their own actions is undeniable. Self-reflection is never comfortable. The Stoics believe that personal growth comes through introspection and the courage to confront one's own shortcomings. When you disappear, you create the conditions for this process to take place. Without you there to offer reassurance or cushion their ego, they are forced to sit with their regrets. They replay every interaction, wondering what they could have done differently. Did they take you for granted? Were they too distant, too dismissive, too focused on their own needs to truly see yours? The answers don't come easily, but each painful realization leaves a mark. In this stage, they begin to grasp the depth of their loss, not just of a person, but of something more significant. An opportunity to be better, to connect more deeply, to grow alongside someone who genuinely cared. And this is where regret turns inward, becoming a powerful force that drives them to question their own behavior. The irony is that they didn't appreciate your presence when they had it, yet now, in your absence, they are haunted by what they failed to nurture. This realization is brutal but necessary. It forces them to acknowledge that their own choices led to this outcome. For you, this stage marks a turning point as well. While they spiral through their self-reflection, you have already embarked on your own path of emotional clarity. You've embraced the Stoic lesson that detachment from external validation is the key to inner peace. Their regrets, their realizations, and their internal battles are no longer your burden to bear. Let them sit with their thoughts. Let them face the uncomfortable truths about how they treated you. True self-reflection only occurs in the absence of distraction, and by walking away, you've given them the space to confront themselves. The most powerful aspect of this stage is that it leaves an indelible mark. Whether or not they ever reach out, whether or not they ever admit their regrets, one thing is certain: they will never forget the impact of your absence. And in that silence, as they come to terms with their own mistakes, you remain a reminder of what it means to value someone before it's too late. For them, self-reflection is the beginning of regret. For you, it's the affirmation of your worth and the strength to never settle for being undervalued again. 5. The urge to pursue you. After days or even weeks of grappling with regret and endless self-reflection, something shifts. They begin to feel an overwhelming urge to pursue you. It's a powerful and deeply unsettling realization for them. They no longer have the comfort of knowing you're within reach. That sense of control they once took for granted has vanished, and in its place arises a desperate longing to regain what they lost. Suddenly, the roles have reversed. The person who once took your presence lightly now finds themselves driven by an uncontrollable need to chase after you. This urge isn't simply about wanting you back. It's rooted in a deeper fear. Fear of finality. Fear of the possibility that you've moved on without them. In their mind, they replay the moments when they could have done things differently, grasping at the hope that it's not too late. Every ignored message, every missed opportunity to express appreciation, every time they assumed you'd always be there. Those memories haunt them now, pushing them to take action. They begin reaching out in ways that once seemed unnecessary. A random text that says, "Thinking of you," a comment on an old social media post, or even a late-night call meant to test the waters. Each attempt is an effort to reopen a door they fear has been permanently closed. But here's where things become interesting. You don't respond. And that lack of response only fuels their desperation. The more you remain silent, the stronger their urge to pursue becomes. In their eyes, you've become a mystery, a symbol of something they can no longer control. Stoic philosophy teaches that people often desire most what they can't have, and by detaching yourself completely, you've turned their assumptions upside down. What once seemed like a relationship they could manage on their terms has now become a source of deep longing and uncertainty. This is where your power lies. They are no longer the ones dictating the dynamic, you are. And the longer they pursue without receiving a response, the more they realize they've lost something truly valuable. The pursuit becomes more than just a desire to reconnect. It becomes an internal struggle, a battle between their pride and the undeniable truth that they want you back. But here's the critical part. You don't need to respond. The moment you do, the balance shifts once again. You worked hard to reclaim your sense of self-worth, and now is not the time to give it away by offering easy closure. Let them chase. Let them feel the sting of wanting something they can no longer grasp. This stage is not about revenge. It's about understanding that real power comes from within, from knowing your worth and refusing to compromise it for someone who only realized it after you left. By staying silent, you teach them one final lesson. You were never an option, and they will have to live with the consequences of taking you for granted. While they're caught in the urge to pursue, you've already moved on, embracing a life where your happiness is no longer tied to their validation. That's the ultimate power. You don't need them anymore, but they can't stop wanting you. 6. The battle between relief and regret. When you first disappear, there's a moment when they feel an initial wave of relief. It's fleeting, but real. They tell themselves that life will be easier now. No more difficult conversations, no more emotional investment, no more effort required. Perhaps they even convince themselves that your absence was inevitable, that they're somehow better off without you. This is their ego's attempt to shield them from the discomfort of loss. In those early moments, freedom feels exhilarating, like a temporary escape from responsibility. But freedom without meaning is hollow. As the novelty of that so-called liberation fades, they begin to feel the weight of something they didn't anticipate: regret. What once felt like an escape now feels like emptiness. The excitement they sought in your absence quickly proves superficial, and they are left facing a stark reality. They didn't lose just anyone. They lost someone who truly added value to their life. The temporary high of relief gives way to a gnawing void, a creeping awareness that they took something irreplaceable for granted. The regret they feel isn't just about missing you. It's about the choices they made that led to your departure. They start to question themselves. Why didn't I appreciate them more? Why was I so distant? How did I let this happen? And yet, the answers don't come easily. Regret is a powerful teacher, but only when we allow ourselves to learn from it. In this moment, they are caught between two forces, the fleeting relief of having avoided emotional depth and the crushing realization that their avoidance cost them something meaningful. This internal battle leaves them restless, as regret slowly begins to overshadow whatever temporary comfort they once felt. The Stoics remind us that true contentment comes not from avoiding discomfort, but from embracing it, learning from it, and growing through it. By walking away, you force them into a space where they can no longer avoid the consequences of their actions. The illusion of freedom they clung to has crumbled, replaced by the inescapable truth that real freedom isn't found in detachment from others. It's found in the clarity and depth of meaningful connections. And now, without you, they're left facing the bitter aftermath of their choices. For you, this stage is significant because it marks a point of divergence. While they battle between relief and regret, you're no longer part of that struggle. You've stepped into a place of emotional independence, understanding that your worth was never dependent on their validation. The battle they face is theirs alone. Let them fight it. Let them wrestle with their regret. You don't need to offer explanations or closure. Your absence is enough. And as they come to terms with the fact that what once felt like relief now feels like loss, you continue moving forward, unburdened by the weight of their indecision. That's where true freedom lies, not in being needed, but in knowing you no longer need them. 7. The desire to play the game. When regret becomes unbearable and their attempts to pursue you go unanswered, a new instinct takes hold, the desire to play the game. They want to regain the upper hand, to reassert the control they once believed they had. But this time, it's not through genuine connection or introspection. It's through manipulation. Desperation drives them to resort to tactics they think might draw you back in. They begin posting pictures designed to provoke jealousy, cryptic status updates that hint at moving on, or exaggerated displays of happiness. It's all an elaborate performance meant to make you wonder, to plant the seed of doubt in your mind. Have they truly moved on without me? This desire to play the game stems from one thing: fear. Fear that they've lost control, fear that you're truly gone, and fear that you've found happiness beyond their reach. The irony is, while they desperately try to manipulate your emotions, they're the ones being consumed by their own. Every post, every crafted image, every veiled message is an attempt to elicit a response, but it's also a reminder to themselves of what they no longer have. They're caught in a vicious cycle. Each effort to draw you in only magnifies their awareness of your absence. From a Stoic perspective, this is where your strength lies. The Stoics taught that emotional control is the foundation of personal freedom. By refusing to engage, you maintain that control. You've outgrown the childish games they're now trying to play. You no longer need to react because you understand that true power doesn't come from manipulating others. It comes from mastering yourself. Their efforts to provoke a reaction fall flat, not because they lack intensity, but because you've learned the art of detachment. You see through the facade, recognizing their actions for what they are: a desperate attempt to reclaim something they lost through their own neglect. Let them play their game. Let them post, hint, and provoke. Each attempt only reinforces their loss. They'll soon realize that their tactics don't work on someone who has found peace within themselves. And as they grow frustrated with the lack of reaction, The desire to play the game will ultimately backfire, leaving them exhausted and empty-handed. You, on the other hand, remain unmoved, a testament to the Stoic principle that true freedom is found in rising above the petty dramas of others. In this stage, silence remains your greatest weapon. Refuse to play along, and you rob them of the power they so desperately crave. They may escalate their efforts, but in the end, they'll come to see that the game they're playing isn't one you're interested in. By choosing peace over provocation, you win, not by outmaneuvering them, but by refusing to be drawn into their shallow contest. While they cling to the illusion of control, you continue to walk your own path, free from the need to engage in their games. And in that quiet, resolute strength, you embody the essence of true Stoic mastery. 8. The crushing weight of silence. Silence. It's a force more powerful than words, more unsettling than anger. In the beginning, they might have thought your absence was temporary, a fleeting moment of distance. But as time stretches on, the silence grows heavier, more oppressive, and inescapable. Every attempt they make to reach you, whether through direct contact or subtle signals, is met with the same unyielding void. This absence of response begins to gnaw at them in ways they never expected. The silence doesn't just leave them wondering. It forces them to confront a reality they've been avoiding. They no longer have access to you, and it's entirely their fault. In a world of constant noise, endless notifications, instant replies, and superficial conversations, silence is deafening. It creates a space where their mind is left to wander, filling the emptiness with thoughts they can't escape. They replay every moment, every word, every interaction, searching for something they missed. The lack of closure drives them mad because there's nothing to cling to. No explanation, no argument, no final goodbye. Just silence. And in that silence, they begin to realize something. They never truly appreciated your presence until now, when it's too late. The crushing weight of silence is more than emotional discomfort. It's a confrontation with the self. Without you there to reassure them or smooth over conflicts, they're left alone with their thoughts, forced to examine their actions. The Stoics understood the power of silence, not as a passive retreat, but as an active assertion of control. By choosing silence, you've taken control of the narrative. You're no longer reacting, no longer participating in a dynamic where your worth was questioned. Instead, you've created a space where their only companion is the echo of their own behavior. They may try to distract themselves, filling their days with activity, surrounding themselves with people, drowning out the silence with noise. But distraction is temporary. At the end of the day, when they're alone, the silence returns, heavier than before. It reminds them of what they lost, of the connection they took for granted. And with each passing day, the weight of that silence only grows, pressing down on them until they can no longer ignore it. For you, the silence isn't a punishment. It's a boundary. It's a declaration that you no longer need to explain yourself or seek validation. It's a sign of your emotional independence, a testament to the strength you've cultivated through self-reflection and personal growth. Let them feel the full weight of your silence. Let them carry the burden of their choices. Because in that silence, they'll learn a lesson far more powerful than any words could ever teach. That you are no longer someone they can take for granted, and the space you left behind cannot be easily filled. 9. The fear that brings them crawling back. Fear. It's the final, inevitable consequence of your absence. What begins as confusion and regret eventually evolves into something far more profound. A deep-seated fear that they've lost you for good. This fear gnaws at them day and night, leaving them restless, anxious, and desperate. They had once believed you were a constant, someone who would always be there no matter how they treated you. But now, faced with your unyielding silence, they begin to understand a terrifying truth. You're gone, and they might never get another chance. This fear isn't just about losing a person. It's about losing the stability and comfort you once provided. They remember the way you made them feel valued, safe, and understood, and the thought of someone else filling that role drives them to the brink. Their mind races with unanswered questions. Have you moved on? Are you with someone else? Have they been replaced in your life as easily as they once thought you could be? Each question fuels their desperation, making it harder for them to maintain the illusion of control they once clung to. Pride no longer matters. Ego crumbles beneath the weight of fear. All that's left is the burning desire to get you back, no matter what it takes. This is the moment they start to reach out in earnest, not with subtle games or cryptic messages, but with raw vulnerability. They might send long, emotional texts confessing how they truly feel, or perhaps they'll show up unexpectedly, hoping to catch you off guard. Whatever their approach, it's driven by a single, overwhelming emotion: the fear of being replaced and forgotten. They're no longer trying to manipulate or provoke a reaction. They're begging for another chance, hoping that it's not too late to repair what they so carelessly broke. But here's the truth. By the time fear drives them back, you've already moved forward. You've found strength in your silence, clarity in your solitude, and peace in your detachment. Stoic philosophy teaches that true freedom comes from recognizing what is within your control and letting go of what isn't. By walking away, you've embraced that freedom. Their fear may bring them crawling back, but it's no longer your responsibility to ease their anxiety or mend their wounds. They're facing the natural consequence of their actions, and that fear is a necessary part of their growth. Let them fear losing you. Let them wrestle with the realization that they can no longer take you for granted. While they're consumed by the thought of what they lost, you've reclaimed your power and stepped into a life where your happiness is no longer dependent on someone else's recognition. This fear they now feel? It's the same fear you once had, the fear of not being valued. But unlike them, you've learned to rise above it. You've learned that your worth isn't tied to anyone's inability to see it. And so, when they come crawling back, driven by fear, you'll know that the power has shifted. You don't need them anymore. They, however, need you more than ever. But this time, it's too late. You've grown beyond the person they once took for granted, and their fear of losing you becomes nothing more than an echo of a chapter you've already closed. Conclusion. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Stop allowing others to take you for granted. Life is too short to remain in relationships or situations where your value is overlooked. When you disappear, when you step back without warning or explanation, you disrupt the cycle of complacency and force others to see what they've lost. But more importantly, you reclaim something even more valuable: your self-worth. You realize that you were never defined by how others treated you, but by how you chose to respond. Walking away isn't an act of weakness. It's an act of courage. It's a statement that you will no longer settle for less than you deserve. As the Stoics remind us, true strength lies in mastering the self, in finding clarity through detachment, peace through resilience, and power through silence. By disappearing, you've done more than make them miss you. You've freed yourself from the need to be validated by anyone but yourself. And that's where your greatest growth begins. If this message resonated with you, if it stirred something deep within, a desire to change, to grow, to reclaim your power, then take action today. Stop being an option for those who don't see your worth. Step into the most powerful version of yourself and never look back. You are in control of your life, your emotions, and your happiness. If you found this content valuable and want to continue your journey toward inner strength and self-mastery, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support allows us to create more thought-provoking content, inspired by timeless Stoic principles and dedicated to personal growth. Together, we can continue exploring the philosophies that help us live better, stronger lives. Thank you for watching. Remember, you are no longer defined by others. You are defined by how you rise beyond them. Stay strong, stay silent when necessary, and always keep moving forward. See you in the next video.